Hello, and welcome to Regiments of Renown High Elf Edition. So, as per usual with these videos, we're going to take a look at all the High Elf Regiments of Renown, and we're going to talk about what makes them unique, what unique abilities they have, and when I would consider including them in my armies. This video is geared mostly towards domination mode, but it can help you out in campaign or land battles as well. So, let's get started. First up, we have the Scions of Mathland, the RR Spear unit. Just basic spearmen. Their unique ability is the Aura of Protection, which gives a 10% ward save to all units within 35 meters when you have Winds of Magic 15 or greater. And that last condition is what really holds this unit back. 10% ward save is really, really nice. The Aura isn't huge, but 10% ward save is 10% ward save. You'll usually take it. But because in multiplayer, you usually want to be casting your spells as often as you can, you're not going to spend a whole lot of time with your Winds of Magic above 15. So I find this ability isn't actually active that often, which means these guys don't really perform a whole lot better than basic spears, aside from mostly the rank 9 stats, which all Regiments of Renown have. So yeah, these guys have just generally underwhelmed me with that ability. It's really niche, unless you're banking wins for some reason, and I don't know why you would. There's not a whole lot of purpose for these guys, in my opinion. Next, we have the Pure Main Company, the ROR White Lions of Crace. So, these guys have Guardian and Armor Sundering. Guardian it's okay. If your Lord is going to be hanging about with these guys, it's great, but oftentimes I find your Lord is going to be on a horse or a dragon or a bird and flying about and not really hang out with these guys, but if it's nice if they're around. The big thing is Armor Sundering. Armor Sundering is actually pretty nice for these guys because High Elves so often bring loads and loads of non-armor piercing archers. Just basic archers, the Loth and Seaguard, are very, very common sights for High Elves in multiplayer. So having these guys to pair with them to sunder that armor to actually help those archers do a lot more damage to armored units is actually a really, really nice combo. So against heavily armored factions, these guys can be a pretty nice inclusion into most armies. Keepers of the Flame, the RR Phoenix Guard. So, these guys' unique ability, you can't really see it on the card, but it's this Mark of Assyrian ability. And what it does is when these guys die, they explode, which is really funny to me. The damage is actually not that bad, but for such an expensive unit, I'm really not a fan of their whole gimmick being something that involves them dying, because I'd really love my super expensive units to not die. I mean, sooner or later most things will die, but I don't know. It's alright, it's a neat gimmick, but oftentimes elite infantry like this are just going to get killed by a spell anyway, so that's going to just explode and not really damage your enemy, and fortunately it doesn't friendly fire, as far as I could tell, but I find you're not really going to get your money back with these guys very often. The ability's neat, it's a cool gimmick, but for the price, it's just not worth it, in my opinion. Alright, on to missiles. We have the Talons of Torquelda. These guys have fire attacks as well as flammables. They imbue fire weakness on any target. And that's a really nice buff when paired with the fact that they do have the fire damage, because it means that they just do 20% extra damage on top of having greater missile strength because of being rank 9. So they just do a load of damage, and especially when you combine them with any other fire damage sources like Phoenixes or the Fireborn, they can really, really melt even big armored targets. So these guys, I bring in a lot of builds. They are incredibly strong. Their damage output is insane. They're definitely they're probably the best ROR that the High Elves have. These guys they're just crazy good. Oops. Next, we have the Storm Riders, the Lothing Seaguard. These guys have two main advantages over the basic ones. They have Firewall Smoothing and Vanguard Deployment. In Domination, this makes them a really nice reserve unit to bring in a little late after the fight has started, because not only do they have the Vanguard so they can catch up to the fight faster, the Firewall Moving also means they can keep moving while firing, obviously, and that lets them make up ground a lot faster as well, and just lets them rejoin your forces much, much faster. So they're actually a really nice reserve unit, and I take them quite often. They're pretty solid. Their extra stats are also nice, just means they're pretty hard to kill. The Grey Shadow Warrior ROR. So these guys have Snipe, as well as this ability right here, Loic Shroud. He has 25% speed, stock, and unspottable. So they already have stock, so this ability doesn't matter for them. Unspottable is the big one. And to be honest, I don't find Unspottable that valuable on a missile unit, because they're not often coming in range of anyone to be spotted in general. Like, that's their whole thing, is they're kiting units. They want to be shooting from, 180 meters and then backing off, and since they already have sniped, they're not getting spotted anyway. You really only need Unspottable when you're getting close to something, and that's not really in the game plan for these guys. For a unit like, Death Runners that Skaven have, they have the concealment bombs that give them Unspottable, and that's really useful because you want to sneak up on things. You want to get close to them. But for these guys, that's really not their goal, so this ability doesn't really provide a whole lot for them. The speed is nice, I guess. An extra 10 speed is okay, but I don't know. It's not a very compelling ability on a unit like this to me. The snipe is alright, but the game is... There's already a bug in the game where stocked units don't really decloak when firing half the time anyway, so it's not essential. If you're bringing Shadow Warriors, I would usually go with the basic variant, to be honest. Next up, we have the Everqueens Court Guards, the Sisters of Avalorn ROR. So, these two have two abilities. It is, first of all, the Banner of Avalorn for 20% power recharge permanently. If they're on the battlefield, you're getting extra winds of magic, or getting faster winds of magic. And Encourage. I find both of these abilities to be kind of underwhelming on this unit. The Winds of Magic recharge, High Elves have good magic generation anyway. Most of their casters have multiple items to increase Winds of Magic recharge. So when I've played High Elves, I've never really felt like I struggled to get that Winds of Magic. So it doesn't really fill a hole to me. And Encourage, I like Encourage on frontline units that are, fighting and their leadership is getting low very often. For an archer unit like this, if something's on top of them fighting them, or a unit near them, it means your backline's already compromised, and honestly, you're kind of okay if your archers run away, so that way they get to safety, and then they can turn around and shoot. If your archers just stand and fight, you're going to be taking a lot more damage. And these ones in particular, their melee stats are incredible. They're not going to take a whole lot of damage, but the Encourage affects all the units around them. I don't think it affects themselves. I can't actually recall. Actually, I can check. Yeah, Encourage doesn't affect themselves. It only affects neighboring units, which, if they're going to be in your backline, will be archers. So those archers usually want to actually get out rather than stand and fight. So I don't find Encourage to be that compelling of an ability on a backline unit like this. So personally, I'm not really a fan of the Everqueens Court Guard. All right, on to Cav. We have the Heralds of the Wind, the Illyrian River Archer variant, ROR variant. So they have extra speed and some extra charge bonus, and actually they have ITP too. I don't recall if the basic variant has that. So they have immune to psychology as well. Oh wait, they're getting that from the bird that we'll talk about later. Okay, I'm not crazy. That's not supposed to be there. So yeah, speed and charge bonus. I find the speed not super relevant. 90 speed on the basic variant is usually plenty to keep themselves safe, to get away from anything that's going to come at them. The charge bonus is alright. It really helps them to serve as that hybrid skirm cav, melee cav, especially as their rank 9 stats bring up to 40, 43. They're actually a really solid melee cav. So if you're trying to do pure skirmishing with them, they're probably going to disappoint you. But if you want that hybrid unit of actually being able to, have that skirmish potential and then also be able to go in and punish in melee, these guys are actually a pretty solid choice. They're a little pricey at 800, but they're not bad for that mixed role unit. Next we have Wraiths Pride, the War Lions of Krace. These guys' unique ability is Mighty Roar. -8 leadership, -25 speed in a 35 meter radius for 25 seconds. So these guys are anti-infantry. That's their whole specialty. They're armor-piercing anti-infantry meant to get in the back line of, say, dwarves and just kill the quarrelers, recharge the front line. Because that's their role, the speed debuff doesn't help them a whole lot. They're not really trying to catch anything. Most things they're trying to get after are already slower than them. So they have a pretty hefty speed on their own. The leadership debuff isn't bad. -8 leadership can be really nice, especially when you are coming with that rear charge to pop that and really break somebody's front line. But for, they're 1,025, I believe. That's a really hefty price to pay for just a -8 leadership buff. So if you're really sold on bringing War Lions, I find the basics do the job just fine. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm really missing out on this ability if I just take the basic one. So these guys, it's a neat ability, but for the price, I'd probably skip it. The Fireborn, the ROR Dragon Princes, and my personal favorite ROR on the High Elf roster. So these guys have fire damage as well as anti-large, as well as just nutty rank 9 stats. And I think they have, yeah, the fire resistance as well, 40% fire resist. These guys are kind of nuts. They're just pure anti-large stats are incredible and makes them very, very good at bringing down large single-entities or enemy cavalry. The one contingency, the one thing there is just that they're really scared of enemy anti-large armor-piercing cavalry. If your opponent doesn't have armor-piercing anti-large cavalry, like Cold One Knights or Cold One Spear Riders, then they are a dominant force in cav games. They'll beat most other cavalry, but if it's AP, they really, really struggle. Though if there's no AP on the field, they can be an absolute terror. They can kill big single entities just fine, especially when paired with the Talons of Torquelda, which we saw earlier. It can be that fire weakness. It's a really, really nasty combo. They'll take down Stonehorns, they'll take down dragons. They will do work if they're not punished by that hard counter that they do have. And last but not least, we have the Omen of Assyrian, the ROR Arcane Phoenix. This guy's unique ability is the Omen of Hope, which is what we saw affecting these Heralds of the Wind earlier and confusing me. It gives immune to psychology in a 55-meter aura, which is actually a really nice ability for High Elves, as they don't have a whole lot of ITP on their roster anywhere. So having this big bird in the sky flying around in a pretty sizable aura, giving that immune to psychology is a really, really solid ability, especially since it is a pretty good duelist, and it's going to be fighting those terror-causing monsters anyway, so it is right there where the ITP needs to be. It's pretty solid. Now, it is about 500 gold more than the basic Arcane Phoenix, and Arcane Phoenixes themselves aren't the greatest these days. But if you do want that big terror-causing monster, with a bit of horde clear from this, the ability is definitely not bad to take on top of it. So, alright, that is all of the Regiments of Renown for the High Elves. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time.